Episode 121 of 5 Drinks to Midnight. In the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. By the time this episode goes live, it'll be National Drinks and Wine Day, which is perfect because we are headed down to the Spaniard to talk to Henderson Berrutti, Senior Brand Manager of González Byass Spirits. So we're going to drink some sherry. But before we do, like and subscribe, hit the bells, the whistles, leave a comment if you like what we're doing. Let's get started. Bye. Claire, thank you so much for joining us. 5 drinks per minute, 5 drinks, 5 questions. Thank you for joining me at the Spaniard. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. We met at the Delmore event, and I was hooked, and I'm so glad that you said yes. So thank you so much. This is awesome.
No, it's exciting.
What are we drinking first?
So we're having, I wouldn't say it's a cocktail. It's basically a sherry spritz.
Okay.
So we use our Fino sherry, Tio Pepe, and we just build it over ice. We fill it up with Sprite and a little bit of mint.
Okay.
So when you have your really long hot summer days in Jerez, when it's like 115, especially during our big festival, this is the best way to drink sherry because you're basically going all day and all night. So
okay.
It makes it easier drinking and keeps you going all night.
Awesome.
Tio Hito, we call it.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Salud, as they say in Spain.
What do you call it again?
Tio Hito.
Tio Hito?
Tio Hito. So it's called Rebo Hito.
Okay.
But our wine's called Tio Pepe, so it's Tio Hito.
Okay.
It's a hard one. It's super refreshing. It's far too easy to drink. It gets a little bit dangerous.
Super crushing. I can see why you go all night on that. Yeah, but yeah, that could be also very, very dangerous. All right, well, question 1. It's always an origin story, but how'd you get started in the spirits industry?
I know people, especially because I'm Scottish and talk about Spanish spirits and wines, so it's very confusing for people. Yeah. Just by sheer luck, which I think most people in the spirits industry know. I studied marketing in Spanish at university, spent a year abroad in Spain, fell in love with Spain. So as soon as I graduated, it was like, I'm going back, I don't care what I do. So moved back to Spain, worked in a bar, and then they have this like international program where they put international graduates into companies, Spanish companies, and just by sheer coincidence, they put me into a sherry company. Okay. So I worked there for 6 months. But that was long enough for me to fall in love with the whole, I didn't know anything about sherry.
I was going to ask, like...
No. I'm from the UK. It's not, my grandmother used to have it Christmas time, it's not. I didn't know anything, and I worked there for 6 months and just fell in love with the whole wine world and specifically the region. So then I moved to Jerez, which is the capital really of sherry country, and ended up staying for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And then my company opened an office here, in Chicago. So they transferred me to the Chicago office. Okay. So that's how I ended up in the US.
All right.
And took a little bit of detour.
Yeah, and then you're based out of Jersey now, right?
So I recently just moved to Long Island. Okay. But we still have our office in Chicago. So our company's based in Chicago. Okay. But we have people all over, yeah. So we are based, we really are focused on sherry. That's where the company began. And we have some nice like sherry aged spirits, which we'll see today. But also we have wine from all over Spain. We have Rioja, we have Cava, Rioja Baixas, all like the main regions as well. So I'm kind of sherry, wine, spirits.
All right.
All of them.
That's awesome. How was it, again, the moving and the traveling, it's so crazy because again, going from like the UK to Spain, and then from Spain to the coldest, hellest place on earth, which is Chicago. And again, I'm from the Midwest, so I can say that. But like Chicago, it is that kills people.
So when I lived in Spain, I lived in Jerez, which is right in the south. Literally you can see Africa. Okay. So imagine how hot it is. Yeah. There's 300 days of sunshine a year. Which moving from Glasgow was a welcome change. I was very happy to be there. But the biggest shock, you're right, was when I moved to Chicago. So first of all, Jerez is a small city. There's 200,000 people. Because I worked in a big company, I'm foreign, everyone knew me. It's a very small town. And then I moved to Chicago, which is this huge city And before I moved, I was like, it's cold, it's fine, I'm from Scotland, I can do it. Oh my goodness. Like, I moved in June, so I had the summer to kind of settle in.
All right.
But then winter hit, and I mean, I have never experienced temperatures like that in my life. Like, Scotland gets to like freezing, and that's it. It doesn't really.
You can say 0, it's okay.
We
speak Celsius.
7 years here, and I still don't understand Fahrenheit. Yeah. But Chicago, and I haven't even lived a bad winter in Chicago. Like, apparently before I moved, they were much worse. Yeah. But I mean, yeah.
I mean, a few years ago, I think they had vodka that actually froze, so that's how cold Chicago was.
People like throw water outside and
freeze it.
Yeah, it's not. So I can say I'm very happy to now be in Long Island. Like, look, they're having really bad storms last week.
Yep.
My husband and I were looking at like the weather, and we were like, I think we made the right decision. So so it was definitely a culture shock. Also because Chicago, at first I lived in the city, and it's such a big city. Like, I love Chicago, it's a great city. But coming from the south of Spain was difficult. But I think because I had the UK background, it's a little bit easier.
Okay.
Some of my Spanish friends were just like this, because it's so different from Spain. Whereas I think it's more similar to the UK, so that made things a little bit easier to kind of settle in as well. But yeah, I mean, I love Chicago, but Spain has my heart.
Okay.
I still miss Spain.
Well, and so again, were you always like a place, like were you in Spain before you had moved? Like have you traveled? Like you said.
Not really. Like vacation with my family.
Okay.
Like, so in the UK, because it's such bad weather, every time there's a vacation, you go somewhere. So like, we were always going to like Italy or Cyprus or Crete. Spain, I think I'd been to once or twice with my family.
Okay.
But it really wasn't somewhere we'd spent a lot of time. My mum's much more into Italy. So when I first moved there, I didn't know, and I learned Spanish at university, but it's that way you learn it, but you don't actually speak it.
Yeah.
So I didn't really speak Spanish. It was all new for me, and at the start, I was just turned 21, like literally turned 21 2 weeks before moving. So I was scared.
Okay.
Super scared when I moved. Like, my parents came with me for the first 2 weeks, and when they were leaving, I was like, I'm not going to leave. 6 months later, I was like, yeah, I'm not coming home.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm staying. I think my mum thought we'd do a year, she'll get out our system, that'll be good for her.
Nope, didn't even make it half a year. And you said you stayed there for 10 years?
Yeah, stayed there for 10 years. So yeah, it was a long time, and I mean, I really felt at home there. And I still feel like when I think about, like, I love going back to Scotland, of course, because all my family and friends are there. But I don't know, Spain's special. I have this feeling when I'm in Spain, like I feel like I belong there.
Okay.
I don't know why. Maybe I was Spanish in a previous life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And again, I like that you said that, you know, it's a small town and that everybody knew you. I'm sure you stood up quite a bit with accent versus their accents across. I mean, I bet even in Chicago you stood up.
Oh yeah, when I first, so I've been away for 15 years now. Okay. So my accent is much calmer than it was, but because when I lived in Spain, like, I literally didn't speak English ever, only with customers. All my friends were Spanish, I spoke in Spanish at work, like I spoke Spanish the whole time. So I think I preserved more of my accent, so when I first moved to the US, it was much stronger.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how many tastings I did, and you could just see people like glaze over, and I'm like, you don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know.
And everyone's like, no, but keep going. I like the sound of it.
Perfect.
Now it's easier, but at the start, like, one of my colleagues literally was like, I have no idea what you're saying, ever. Especially on the phone, when you call people.
Oh, yeah.
And then my boss is interesting, because he's French. Well, my old boss was French. I met him in Spain, so we always spoke in Spanish. But then when he moved here, we would speak in English, because all our colleagues were English, and it's rude if not. And sometimes he would be like, you need to speak in Spanish, because I don't know what you're saying. And he spoke perfect English, but he was just like, I don't know what you're saying. So yeah, it's cool, but it causes problems sometimes.
That's awesome. And then you've been stateside for 5 years then?
Nearly 7.
Okay,
7
awesome.
in June, yeah.
Do people, when you go back to the UK, do people make fun of you because you become more Americanized than, I have friends that are always like, oh, I'm going to the lift or the elevator, like, or, you know, it's the bin, not the trash,
exactly.
Like, and you say, I'm picking out the...
They do. My friends, so I have this weird act, because even when I lived in Spain, when I would go back to Scotland, I would form sentences as if it was in Spanish, which is the opposite. Like, you say things the opposite way around. So I would say a sentence, and my friends would be like, that doesn't sound right. Like, that doesn't make sense. And now, like, when I first moved to the US, I was always saying, like, I'm not going to become American, I'm not going to say American words, like, I hate it, I'm not going to say American words. But you have to, because, like, if you're in a store, you're speaking to someone, store, say.
Instead of shop.
Exactly. So I'll say words to people and they'll be like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So it's funny, I try and maintain my British element, but sometimes my friends will catch me out. Like if I say store, for example, they'll be like... But it's funny because my husband's Italian and he learned British English before he moved here, but he's been here for like 15 years, so he now speaks American. And we were just laughing yesterday because he said he was going to the shops. And he's like, see, that's you. You're rubbing off on it. So yeah, I try to keep the British side, but it's hard. It's hard.
All right, well, I think that's just a fucking awesome origin story. So again, cheers to you on that. And train's leaving the station. That's question 1. So we're done.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right, question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
So now we're going to stick with the sherry theme, and this is what we call an Oloroso sherry. So this is an Alfonso. So basically it's the Palomino variety, so it's going to be like a lot of nuttiness, like hazelnuts, walnuts, almonds, and this wine's completely oxidized, hence the colour. So this is actually a white wine.
Oh wow.
It's completely oxidized, it spends 8 years in American oak.
Okay.
And Oloroso in Spanish means aromatic, so olor's the verb to smell, so basically means aromatic. So you'll see this has like a really big bouquet in the nose. And super dry though, slightly higher alcohol, but 18%. But I mean, this for me is the type of wine that you can substitute for a red wine. Okay. So where you would have like a nice steak or a venison, like game meat, you would have a nice big red. This is the great substitution. And people don't understand that sherry you can have while you eat. They think it's like an aperitif or a dessert, which it is, but you can also have it during the meal as well. So this is why I wanted to bring this so you can try it.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Let's see what you think.
Oh, wow. Fuck yeah, okay. So...
It's a good response.
Yeah, drier, but yeah, you really get that, like the...
It's dry, but... So the first sherry we had, which we mixed, but this is like bone dry. This one is dry, but it's not overwhelming. Yeah. Like it has a nice roundness to it as well. And it's just, I mean, sherry is so complex, which makes it kind of difficult to understand, but it gives you all this richness and different flavours as well. So it's definitely a... Sherry's one of those things that nobody really wants to try or considers, but once they try it, very few people are like, no. Like everyone's like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, and that's at the Delmore event, because when you were just handing stuff out, I was like, screw the Delmore. Like, I want to try more like your, and then also prices. I was like just blown away. Like
I know,
drinking,
it's crazy. Like it's Spanish wine in general is one of the best bargains out there. Yeah. But then when you look at sherry, like, I mean, behind this wine, so we have to season our cask for 4 years, and then it's aged for 8 years. So that's 12 years of work behind this.
Wow.
And this retails for like $17.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bargain. But people don't know, they don't understand. Like, it's a well-kept secret, so everyone's like, shh, don't tell anyone. But we're selling it, so we're like, people should know. And and so it's definitely, sherry's one of those things that we're trying to kind of educate people and get past that stigma, because once people try it, they love it. Bartenders love like playing with this in cocktails and stuff. It's awesome.
The guys outside were really excited when I told them you were coming, because they were like, that's
especially now people really want low alcohol cocktails.
Yeah.
So using a sherry, you take down the alcohol, but you have all this flavour and complexity that you don't get from like a vodka or a gin or something as well. So it's a really great introduction, I think, especially in the US with such a good cocktail culture. Yeah. So you introduce, and then hopefully people will be like, oh, I might try that by itself. And especially if you have it with food, sherry really comes into its own when you have it with food. So it's just... Yeah,
I can see this with a big old steak. Like this would just be absolutely amazing.
Perfect.
The way that fattiness would come, like just
oxtail, which is typical of the region, is perfect with this as well.
Wow. You said the requirements for sherry, is that a normal requirement? Like again, because I know nothing about that.
So sherry's like a controlled appellation, so like Cava, Champagne, Port, Rioja, so it has like a controlling board. So sherry has to be aged for minimum 2 years in cask. Okay. But those casks can't be new, they have to be seasoned beforehand. Okay. And
with anything or
so what we usually do is we usually take a young wine, and we let it ferment within the barrel. So during that alcoholic fermentation, what it does is it extracts a lot of the harsh components of the wood. Okay. And then you let it sit for 2 or 3 years, depending what you're looking for, and then you start using it for sherry. The reason behind it is sherry's different from any other part of the world, as in, if you're in Bordeaux or Rioja or Napa, all of your best wine's going to new oak. No, everyone talks about the new French oak or the what it brings to the wine. Whereas in sherry, the cask is really much more of a recipient as opposed to giving flavour. We really want the production method and the grape to come through. which is why the cask has to be aged beforehand, because otherwise it would overpower the rest. So we always use old casks, minimum 2 years, and it has to be made in Jerez, which is in the south of Spain. So unfortunately the word sherry is not controlled, so you'll find a lot of sherries made in like South Africa, the US, Australia. They just stick the word sherry on it. Like if it's a kind of sweet aperitif or dessert, they'll just stick the word sherry on it. And it's not, it has to be from this part of the world. It has really unique climatic conditions. We have very strict rules and regulations that we have to stick to. So yeah, if you want the real sherry experience, you have to make sure that it comes from that part of the world.
And then the white wines, like how that has to be 2 years in
minimum 2 years, but you won't find 2-year-old sherries in the market. The youngest you'll find is the first type we tried, which is a Fino, which is going to be like 4 years. But when you're talking about this style, I mean, this is 8 years old. So you're really good. The market's going to be 7, 8, 9, 10, up to over 30 years old. The next one actually we're going to try is 30 years old. So I mean, yeah, I mean what you're getting in your glass is just amazing. It's awesome.
Awesome. All right. So question 2. You kind of touched a little bit about it on question 1, but we did some research. I mean, social stalking, and again, your Instagram is all full of travel pics. So where's your most favorite place to have a drink, and what are you drinking?
Oh my goodness, that's such a hard one. It's like when you ask our winemaker what their favorite wine is, they're like, it's picking one of my children.
Yeah, exactly. Which child is your favorite?
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because, okay, can I split it up?
Please, yeah.
So my favorite country in the world, or my favorite place that I visited, I have a huge list of places I want to go. But my favorite place that I ever visited was Japan. So I spent a week in Tokyo and a week in Kyoto. And it was life-changing. It was amazing. It's so different from, like, I've travelled a lot. When you live in Europe, you travel a lot. You go for the weekend to Paris, you go for the weekend to Rome because it's so close. I love Europe, but it is all similar. Whereas going to Japan was a huge cultural shift, and I loved it, and I really, really want to go back. So that's probably top of my list to go visit again. My favourite place just to sit and have a drink, I have to say, is probably in Spain.
And then are you drinking sherry, or is it something else that...
No, I probably would be drinking sherry, which is interesting because at home, I don't really drink a lot of sherry. Like, I drink a lot of cava, I drink a Rioja, like I do drink a lot of Spanish wines, but I don't drink a lot of sherry. But for me, being in Spain, it's the whole experience. Like, having a glass of sherry in Spain is different. It's like the atmosphere, the experience, the smell, the temperature, everything. I would have to, I think, so the north of Spain, I love San Sebastian. It's one of my favourite cities. It's amazing. If you're a food lover, you need to go. It's absolutely amazing. But I think I would have to say Jerez. Having a glass of sherry in Jerez, because it's the whole memories, experience, culture. Because Jerez is such an amazing city. Like, nobody's really heard of Jerez. When I said I lived there, they're like, where? I'm like, Seville, a little bit more south.
I had to look it up when we
exactly, no one knows. But Jerez is so rich in culture. Like, first of all, we do sherry, one of the best wines in the world. Flamenco, Jerez is one of the founding birthplaces of flamenco, which people don't know. And the Palomino horses, so the white horses, which are famous throughout the world, that train in the Vienna school, etc., they come from Jerez. So it has this really rich culture that no one knows. So I think for me, having a glass of sherry in Jerez is it's everything. It's the culture, it's the people, it's the climate, which is just amazing, and just the memories of having lived there.
Awesome.
So
I agree. I fully agree. Tokyo was a life-changing moment. Like, you walk in and you're walking the streets and you think that there's 3 primary colors in the whole entire world, and then you find out Tokyo there's 14 and everything's just brighter, better, and having drinks.
I felt like such a tourist. Like, I mean, I've travelled a lot, but when I arrived in Tokyo, I remember we got off the train and I felt like I just left my city for the first time. I was literally walking on the street
same.
People are probably looking at me thinking, is she just arrived off the boat? What's happening? But it's just so different. It's amazing. And I feel like I just touched the surface.
That same, New Yorkers, you don't look up, it's just, you walk straight. And Tokyo, I was the head was tilted up at that 45-degree and mouth wide open and just looking at everything.
And I think it's such an interesting culture because through work I'd met a lot of Japanese that come to Spain, I'd look after them, etc. And they're so well-mannered and educated and quiet. And then you go to Japan And you go to the bars at night and you're like, what happened to all these like quiet, well-mannered people?
Yeah,
they're
crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's such like a difference to what you expect.
Yeah, and their train stops at midnight, and you can just be drunk on the train, and it stops, and you can just sleep there until the next morning. Like it was, it blew my mind. Just they drink hard. Well, there we go. That's question 2. So again, this freaking amazing. So cheers.
Glad you like it. Cheers.
Oh, that's so awesome. Question 3, drink 3. What are we drinking?
So we're sticking with sherry.
Excellent.
And you actually tasted this at the Dalmore event. This is one of our special sherries. So this is aged for at least 30 years in cask. So it's like the highest classification you can get for a sherry. It's called Matusalem, and this surprisingly is a cream sherry.
Okay.
So I wanted you to taste this because cream gets a bad rap. Like people are like, oh, cream sherry, I don't want that. And people seem to think they don't drink it in Spain, it's only made for export markets. Like, oh, we'll send them like the cheap stuff. And it's really not. Like I think when you taste this, you'll understand. So it's basically a blend of the last one we had, so all that nuttiness.
Okay.
And then we blend it with PX. So Pedro Jimenez we basically sun dry the grapes, so it's going to be like a raisin. And that's how you sweeten your sherry wine. So you bring 25% in, and you can see in the colour. Yeah, that's just because of the raisin. We don't add any sugar or anything. Okay. It's just that raisin. I mean, imagine the raisin. Imagine the must you get from that. Super dark, super sweet, but it's like luscious and silky and satin. That's what we use to sweeten the sherries. Okay. So, I mean, this is super sweet, but technically for us it's mid-range. And I mean, I just love this wine. 30 years is a long time in cask, so it really is complex and really structured. And it's great with a good Stilton. Yeah. I mean, it's the British coming out at me, but a great Stilton is perfect with this.
Oh, so cheers.
Cheers.
This was, I'm already just salivating. I know this is so fucking good. Like, this is. That just.
I mean, people, you can't say a cream sherry is like your cheap stuff that they just sell to the international markets, and this is a cream sherry, but this is just, I mean.
Yeah. So what is a cream sherry?
So cream basically, it goes by the sugar content.
Okay.
So a cream sherry's definition has between 90 grams per litre and 140 grams per litre, I want to say. This is 128.
Okay.
So basically what it is, like I said, we take the Oloroso, so we take that dry nuttiness and we blend it with the PX.
Okay.
And that's what makes a cream sherry. Technically it was always called in Spain Oloroso Dulce, so a sweet Oloroso. Okay. For some reason they decided to take on the English name, which is cream sherry. And it's called cream, people get confused because they think of like Baileys or that kind of thing. But it's called cream because of that feel on the palate. Like it's round, it's smooth, it's silky, it's creamy. Yeah. And that's why you get that cream name. Although it's a little confusing.
So, and then people say that that's cheaper because, or like it's lesser of a product because
cream sherry's what was like sold a way back, and it kind of gets a bad name. People think it's a lesser product. Like it's sweetened for the international palate and blah blah blah, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Like this is one of our most prized wines. And I mean, you can taste the quality is amazing. Yeah. So cream is just the style, but you still have, I mean, obviously I think our sherry is the best, but all sherries are amazing quality because we're very strictly controlled. So you have to be producing high quality to get sherry on your bottle. So. Yeah.
Awesome. Jesus.
And this is one of the main wines at the Dalmore.
Yep.
Because it's that complexity and that flavour really comes through really nicely in the whiskey. So that's why they use this for a lot of their whiskey expressions.
Well, that's all, this leads perfectly into question 3, which comes from Daniel from Dalmore.
Okay.
So he wants to know, can you talk about the Bell program and how that kind of came about? And then what kind of control do you guys have about when your barrels go out for use on like a whiskey partner?
So I mean, the use of, I mean, everyone who loves Scotch talks about sherry finish, and it literally happened by accident. Like way back when we were shipping sherry to the UK, we would ship it in the barrels, and then it would get to Scotland. I mean, Scotland's are always trying to make the best of the situation, so we would put our whiskey into the barrel and just use it for storage. Okay. And then they realised that it was giving this amazing flavour and character to the whiskey, which because of what it was taking from the cask, because it had this wine in it before. That was happening way back in the 1980s. They actually introduced a law that sherry has to be bottled in Jerez, so you can't ship it in a cask. Okay. So that kind of stopped that part of it because we weren't sending casks anymore, everything was going in bottle. But by that time, the whiskey industry were so on board with the sherry cask finish that they had to kind of find a way around this. So what the majority of the whiskey industry do is they take smaller barrels like hogsheads or whatever, they send them to Jerez. Companies do what we call seasoning them. So we put a young sherry into the cask and it lasts for 18, 24 months, however the whiskey producer wants. Like, it's really up to them. And then we send the cask back to Scotland and they put their whiskey in. What the Dalmore do, which is why our relationship is so unique, is they actually take casks that have been part of our aging system. So the way we age our wine is called Solera, so it's a blending system. And they actually take the 600 litre American oak casks that we use to age our wines. So not only is the cask different, it's more than double the size, the aging that's happening with the wine inside is completely different. So for example, they use the Matusalem cask. So the wine inside is at least 30 years old, and the cask has been used for at least 25, 28 years.
Oh wow.
So the influence that has on the staves, on the wood, is completely different from what you do if you're just seasoning like a hogshead. So it's two very different concepts, and not one is not better than the other. It really depends on what you want for your whiskey. Like, do you really want just a sherry finish? Do you want the sherry to be part of the DNA? And the Dalmore, Richard Patterson was very focused on having the wine as part of the DNA of the brand. So that's why they do this specific aging. So what they take back to Scotland is their 600 litre casks. We send them whole, which is a problem with space-wise. Like, I went to visit the Dalmore with Richard and he was like, I'm running out of space, like, I don't know what to do. But what we calculate that's left behind in the staves after 30 years of aging this wine is about 15 litres of wine. So all of that wine is then what goes into the whiskey. As soon as they put the whiskey into that cask, because it's very high alcohol, it extracts everything that's left behind in those staves. And that's this wine. That's what it's getting into.
Oh wow.
So you get this lovely, like, raisin, nutty, smooth, silky flavour coming from the Matusalem. That really adds to, when they use it in various expressions of Dalmore, it really adds to the character and the flavour of the whiskey. So, I mean, for us, the Dalmore's different because we have this really nice relationship with, well, previously Richard, he's now semi-retired, but he actually, and now his predecessor, they come to Jerez at least once a year. They come to our cellars, they check on their barrels, and they taste other barrels as well, because they're always looking for different, I mean, their barrel program is amazing. They have port, Bordeaux, like all sorts of things. So they're always looking for something different. So they're very involved in the relationship, if you like. And then, but when we send them to Scotland, as soon as it leaves us, it's in their hands. Like, really what they decide, we 100% trust them. We know they're going to use it for good. So whatever they decide, however they decide to use our cask for the aging of their whiskies, and I know they've done, like, they have their staples, but they've done a lot of experiments in the past. It's really, we just hope that they send us some samples in the end, but it's really up to them what they do with the, but it's amazing because they value so much the influence of our casks and of our wines, because for them it really helps construct what is the character of the Dalmore. So I know that when they're out in the market with the whiskies, they bring some bottles of sherry, and it's amazing to, well, you yourself did it, to taste the sherry and then to taste the whiskey, and you're like, okay, now I get it, now I see that character coming through. Which, like I said in the presentation, like, people talk a lot about sherry finish, but people really know what it means. Whereas when you taste the sherry and then you taste the whiskey, you're like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Do you have other, like, are there, and again, not looking for names or anything, but, like, are there other brands that do, like, the same thing that Dalmore does? Like, where they...
With us, I can't speak for other sherry companies, with us, that they take our 600 litre cask part of our Solera system, no. We do work with other whiskey producers, but we do more of a seasoning thing with them. As I said, it really just depends what they're looking for with regards to, like, the sherry finish. So we have various programs where we work differently with producers, whiskey producers, but the specific taking our casks, and specifically for Matusalem, we only do with the Dalmore.
And then your Solera system, like, you did, like, it was like a pyramid kind of thing, like newest barrels on top, and then the older ones down on the bottom. Can you tell us, like, how many barrels actually make up the system, or?
So it depends. So physically, like, if you go to Jerez and go to one of the cellars, which, by the way, you should come, they're amazing. They call them the cathedrals of Jerez because the way the buildings are constructed, they're like no other wine cellar in the world. The way they're physically constructed, we only ever do 4 layers, and that's just a weight issue because it's too much weight and break the one barrel. But depending on the wine that's inside, so for example, this wine, which is aged for 30 years, it would probably have a system of about 20 different layers, all split up, because you can't build a 20 size barrel. But because during those 30 years, that gradually, it goes in the top as a young sherry, and gradually over time, we call it running the scales, moves down through the different layers and comes to the bottom one before it's bottled. So with a wine like Matusalem, even though it's 30 years old, we run the scales a little less, if you like. We're not doing it consistently every year or every 6 months like we would do with younger sherries. But we do run them consistently, because when you run the scales, you're bringing a younger sherry in and it's giving freshness to the wine. So what you'll find in this wine as well, which I'm sure you see, it has the complexity and the structure of an old wine, but it's still fresh, it's still light, it's still bright. And that comes from this system, because you're constantly refreshing the barrels. You're bringing life into the wine. It's not just sitting there.
Right.
You're constantly bringing life into the wine, and that's why we constantly run the scales, if you like, so we call it.
And you said that, so like, is the top barrel that's like a 2-year-old barrel, and then the bottom?
So all the barrels that are used are going to be up to 30 years old.
Okay.
So normally, on average, we get about 30 years from the one barrel. Obviously, some barrels come to the end of their life and they break and we can no longer use them. We have coopers working on site, so whenever like a stave breaks or it starts to leak or whatever, they can come and fix it. So we try and make them last as long as possible. Obviously, you do at some points have to bring in new barrels. It just, unfortunately, we do. But they have this seasoning system, which I told you about earlier. So they're at least, 4 years old before they come into the Solera system. And then as time goes on, obviously. So between 4 and 30 years old on average are barrels. What we do is that our younger barrels will be used for our more styles like this maybe. And then when we come to our finer wines, for example, the first wine we tried, they're very much in our older barrels, because we want the least influence of the wood possible, because this is, it's called fino, which in Spanish means fine. So we want elegant, delicate finesse, so we have to use our very, very old barrels. So you'll find in the system that this barrel might be 15 years old, and this one's 5 years old, and this one's 25 years old. It really depends.
And then you finished that. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I fucking hated this. This is terrible. Stupid restaurant joke, but it's so fucking good. But with whiskey, the age statement has to be the youngest that's in. You could say it's 15, but there might be a 17 or 18-year-old in there. Is that the same with the sherry then? Is that, or
so sherry is a little bit different. They take an average. So there's only really 4. There's many ages of sherries, and we have sherries which are over 50 years old. But there's only 4 official statements. 12 years that you put on the label, for example. 12, 15, 20, and 30. So this is a 30. So it's an average. They take an average. So this doesn't mean that the youngest drop of sherry is at least 30 years old. It means that on average it's at least 30 years old. So it's a little different. But they're very strict. I don't know how they do it, but they're very strict. They take samples from all the different parts of the Solera. They use what they call carbon 14, which is what they use for fossils. So it's a whole science bit I don't understand, but it's legit.
And again, I'm sorry, because again, these are the first time, like I said, you're my first wine person, so I'm really excited for this, and I'm gonna ask.
You started with one of the hardest regions.
But I'm gonna ask some stupid questions. So that's
no, there's no stupid questions, and especially with sherry, we have masters of wine and master soms coming to us, and even they're experts. I can't even imagine how much they know. And even for them, sherry's new and difficult and complex. It's hard. Sherry's hard, which is a problem when you're trying to explain it to the consumer. But it gives us so much depth and uniqueness and variety. It makes it so special as well at the same time. So. Well,
with that, just saying, being a wine seller, did you have to do a psalm training or anything along those lines?
So I really learned in my feet. I was really lucky when I moved to Jerez. One of my main jobs was at our winemaker in Jerez doesn't speak English. So one of my main jobs was translating his tastings. So anytime we had press coming in or distributors or whoever, I would translate him. So you just learn on your feet, because he's telling the story, you're translating, and the questions are always different depending on the crowd. So every time he answered a question, I was like, oh, okay, I never knew that. But at the same time, myself, I wanted to learn more. So I did... in Europe and the UK, we do more WSET, as opposed to the SOM route, which is very American. So I started my WSET and I finished advanced, which is level 3, and I'm halfway through my diploma, but then COVID hit, got pregnant, had a baby, like things happened. So I'm halfway through my diploma, and I've actually just started the Spanish Wine Scholar as well.
Okay.
But for me, and it also happened with a Rioja winemaker, like just working directly with the winemakers and having to translate them and speak to them and spend time with them is where you really learn. Like that's where I learned everything. That's where I learned the best about sherry. And then, it's the best way to learn. I mean, especially with our winemaker who was actually born in the winery. He says he doesn't have blood, he has sherry. So, I mean, he's just a fountain of knowledge. And, like, after tastings, I would always have extra questions. I'd be like, so, Antonio, tell me about this. And he would tell me more as well. So.
That's fucking... I bet that, like, that's probably the best way. Because, again, not only are you translating, but then you're memorizing it. So then, that's... It
was amazing, but they were mean to me. Like, when I first started, Antonio still does it, so if I go back, I always still translate him. And he'll, like, so our winemaker here is super poetic, like, he's very, like, he'll say all these super poetic things. And he says things in Spanish, then he'll look and be like, on you go, translate that, good luck. I'm like, thanks, Antonio. He always does it, and then he laughs.
That's awesome. Wow. Terrible. But
we're both like,
I know.
We're both
well, that's question 3, so cheers on that. Question 4, drink 4, what are we drinking?
So we're now moving on to spirits.
Okay.
So we don't only make sherry in Jerez, we also make brandy.
Okay.
So there's a special geographic indication called brandy de Jerez. So it has to be made in Jerez, it has to be aged in sherry casks.
Okay.
And it has to be aged for a minimum of 6 months. So this is a Solera Gran Reserva. So this is actually aged for a minimum of 12 years.
Okay.
It's interesting because Lepanto is actually kind of like a deal within itself because it's the only existing brandy de Jerez that is made 100% from Jerez.
Okay.
So by that I mean, they say it has to be aged in Jerez, but you can use any grape variety. You can distill the grape anywhere, and as long as you bring it to Jerez for aging, it's considered a brandy de Jerez.
Okay.
So the majority of the companies, they have distilleries in the centre of Spain, La Mancha. They use the Irene variety. So the Irene is actually the #1 planted white grape variety, but it's only really used for distillation.
Okay.
And then they bring it to Jerez and do the aging, which is fine. But what we do is slightly different. We actually use the Palomino variety, so the same variety we use for our sherries, from our vineyards in Jerez. We distill in Jerez. We're the only seller to have stills in Jerez.
Wow.
And then we age in Jerez for a minimum of 12 years.
Wow.
So it really is a kind of unique within its category. And you have this amazing, so our stills are from Cognac. They're Charente stills from the 60s in Cognac. And when we first started using them, the people from Cognac were like, I'm not sure what you're going to get with quality, and they came to Jerez apparently and were like blown away with the quality of what we were getting.
Okay.
So for a French person to tell you that,
right. And you said that the brandy, so you usually has to be aged for 6 months?
So minimum to be a brandy de Jerez Solera, 6 months. To be a Solera Reserva is 1 year, and to be a Grand Reserva is 3 years.
Okay.
So this is a Grand Reserva, but it's 12 years.
12 years.
So we're like way over the...
And any reason why to go
Just
away?
because our master distiller, so it's aged in sherry cask, like we're talking about with the whiskey. And to really get that complexity and that flavour coming through from the sherry cask, it needs time. It needs to just, they say in Jerez, everything takes time. Everything's like mañana. Like, there's no rush.
No rush.
And it's the same with our spirits, like they take their time. So this actually spends 9 years in Tío Pepe casks, which is this like super dry, fine, elegant. And then 3 years in Matusalem, so the one we just tried, so that lovely, luscious, like raisin, nutty character coming through, spends 3 years in those casks as well. So that's where we get our Lepanto.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, that's fucking delicious.
So you get the raisin, you get it's not sweet, but it has a round finish to it. But more than anything from brandy de Jerez, what you get is like a really elegant character. Like it's very elegant, it's really refined. It's not in your face, overpowering. Like I said, that time that we take gives us that character. Like if we made this in 3 years, it would be good, but it would be in your face, big, bold. Whereas we want something more elegant, more finesse. So,
I love this. This is absolutely, again, the raisiny in this is so nice. Like,
It's amazing. The brandy de Jerez, like as after after dinner drink, so they call it in Jerez, in Spain in general, sobremesa, which means on the table.
Okay.
So after, I'm sure you've heard about your 4-hour lunches in Spain.
Oh yeah.
So you have your lunch and then you have sobremesa. So once they clear all the plates away and they'll bring you like a brandy or a whiskey or whatever you're drinking, and you just sit and chat. But previously you would have a cigarette or a cigar or whatever, and that's sobremesa, and this is the perfect.
That's awesome.
The perfect person to have in company with the sobremesa.
Well, this sounds like this needs to be like a 5 Drinks for Midnight, like brand sponsor, because that's exactly what we do. We haven't had, usually we drink and then we have lunch. So like that's but I've been in many lunches where you finish with this, and at 6 o'clock you're still having lunch. Yeah.
And before, like this goes, I don't smoke, but this goes perfect with cigar.
Okay.
So before, when you were allowed to smoke cigars, and sometimes in Jerez when we kind of shut down the restaurant, with a cigar, apparently this is the best.
Okay.
The best combination.
No, I do not smoke either, so like that, but yeah, so okay, to our cigar people, then, well, fuck. Alright, so question 4, so home base is Chicago, or well, Spain.
Long Island.
Well, you live in Long Island.
Company.
Yeah, company. Yeah. So I mean, you have Spain, you have Chicago, you have Long Island. What does a day in the life look like for you? Like, are you up at like? And again, I know you have a new baby and everything, so yes, you probably are up very early.
Yes.
But like, what like are you up talking Spain time, and then are you Chicago, or like are you just like what's a day in the life?
So it's interesting because, we have Spain, we have Chicago, Long Island, I'm Scottish, my husband's Italian, so it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's an absolute mess. So now, after COVID, like before I was in Chicago, like they basically brought me into Chicago because they wanted me in the office because I knew the company, like we bought over an existing company, and I knew González Byass, I know the culture, like it's funny because in Jerez was the headquarters where I lived, but it's where the family live as well, and our chairman and vice chairman are family members. My direct boss was a family member, so I was literally like rubbing shoulders with the family. Like I'd meet them in the corridor, like, oh, hi Mauricio, how are you? Like, so you learn a lot about the company, like when you know the people behind it. So that's really why they brought me to Chicago, to really teach my colleagues about that. And because when you're in Spain, like González Byass is such an institution, like it's a family, we've been there since 1835, we're in our 5th generation, it's very well respected within Spain, within the Spanish culture, but obviously here it's unknown. So we really want to transmit that and bring it through and really like teach our customers and our clients about that. So that's really why I moved to Chicago. So before I was in the office every day, traveling a lot. So one of my main roles is basically spreading the word, I like to call it. So it's brand education, getting out there, giving tastings, talking to people, teaching them about the brands, because a lot of Spanish wines, especially sherry, are unknown. Here it's dominated by domestic, Italian, French. Once you get outside that, it's kind of unknown. So Spanish wine, people don't really know. And the best way is liquid to lips, getting them to taste it, and especially if you're there and you can explain it, then, and as I said, people always walk away. Like, I've never had people being like, not really. They love it. But you have to be out there tasting. So a big part of my job, I was traveling all the time. Like I've seen basically all the main cities in the US. Just doing events, tastings, etc. COVID happened, so I became an expert at Zoom tastings, which I hate. I hate them. And then it became very much like all of my colleagues are all over the place anyway, so it didn't make sense for me to go into the office because, my boss lives in Rhode Island, like it doesn't make sense. So I work from home all the time. So a day in the life of Claire's, I'm up usually 6:30 with the baby. He goes to school, and then just really working on my computer, working from home. But the cool thing is I still get to travel and do things like this. So last week I was in Texas. And the good thing with my role is I'm technically in marketing, but my team use me for a lot of different things. So last week I was in Dallas. I spent a day working the market, which is great because a lot of marketing people sit in the office and don't see what happens in the market. You really have to know, and especially in the US, because one of the things I'm so surprised at here is how different each market is. Even just looking at the alcohol laws, they're so different. So I spent a day working the market in Texas. I did the event with Dalmore. We had a sherry wine dinner with a group of female wine lovers. So it's a really different agenda, if you like. And then this week I'm in New York, I'm here with you, then we have meetings tomorrow. So the thing I love it, I mean, I've been doing my job for 15 years now, so it's a long time. So you maybe think you can get a little bit bored, but it's so different every day. That's the thing I love about my role, it's so different every day. So one day I'm at home answering emails, the next day I'm in New York doing a podcast, the next day I'm in Texas doing a wine dinner. So it's really exciting that way. I get to do so much and meet so many people, which helps so much in your job, because just conversations like this, or conversations with a bartender, conversations in a store, like that's where we learn about our products and we learn what needs to be done. So that is the most beneficial thing to us.
That's awesome.
So,
do you prefer doing more, like, because again, I've never seen like a sherry rep like walk, like I've seen a lot of whiskey or spirits reps like walk into the bar and just be like, hey, can I talk to the manager? I got some stuff to try them on. Like, I don't see that a lot, maybe I just haven't, maybe I'm going to the wrong bars, but I haven't seen that with like sherry people. But again, seeing you do the tasting like at the Dalmore, and then you're talking about like the Texas event, is that more of your like job, like, or do you have like brand ambassadors that go out and do that?
So we have our sales team.
Okay.
So we obviously work with a distributor, but we have our sales team, and they're the ones really going like cold calling the accounts and making the contacts and everything. I only really get called in if there's like an event or if they're taking me around. But I mean, for us, we are traditionally a wine company. So for us, it was always very different. Like you spoke to the sommelier, or you spoke to the buyer, or you spoke to the front of house. Now we're very much bringing the bartenders, because obviously we have our spirits, but more than anything with our sherries, and we have sherry-based vermouth, which you have to try it. And that's where we find the most excitement about our sherries. Because a lot of somms, they know sherry, they love it, they have it on their dessert menu, whatever. But bartenders are so excited about sherry. Bartenders in general, I find, are kind of, for lack of a better word, geeky. Like they really want to learn about the product. And sherry has such like a long history and such an intrinsic production method. And when they start, so what we do is like I'll go in and I'll taste through different types of sherries. So one thing about sherry, it's hard to understand, but if you taste various styles and like together, you're like, okay, now I get it. Like now I understand the ways you make the sherry. So I'll taste through various styles and then basically just be like, hey, take the bottles, and I know nothing about cocktails. Like I don't pretend to know about cocktails. Take the bottles and go. And the creations they come up with is just amazing. There's such a wide complexity and variety to sherry that they find so many different ways to use it, and it's really exciting for us to watch. Because I moved to Jerez 15 years ago, and it was cocktails they didn't consider it to be up to the quality of the sherry. So it was like, no, you can't use this in a cocktail. But now, like, the cocktails that are being made are absolutely amazing. Like, these people are geniuses and creators, and like everything's so well thought out and balanced that I'm more than happy for them to take our wine and use them in.
Well, the lads were really excited. Like I said, like when I told them you were coming in, they were very, very excited. So I'm scared to take you outside of the room because they might mug you for like.
But for us, I mean, that's when, especially, I mean, obviously we sell all different types of wines, but especially with sherry, I think because I live there, it's really part of my heart and soul. And to see people so excited and like do so many crazy, amazing things with their sherries is it's amazing. It's worth it.
Awesome. All right, question 5, drink 5, our last drink of the night. What are we drinking?
So this is something a little bit different. This is our whiskey.
Okay.
It's called Nomad Outland Whiskey. So it's interesting that we spoke so much about whiskey and the Dalmore, etc. We decided to flip things in its head. So we thought, okay, you guys always take our cast to Scotland. What if we do it the other way around? What if you bring your whiskey to Jerez? And this had never been done before.
Okay.
And we were lucky to have a partner like Richard, and he was up for it. He was like, yeah, I'll help. So Richard does the blend for us in Scotland. So he sources from 30 different distilleries, mainly Speyside, so a more like elegant feminine touch. He makes the blend. He ages in Jerez for 3 years, in Scotland, where they make the Dalmore, for 3 years, and then we bring it to Jerez. And so it can't be a Scotch because we leave Scotland, but we bring it to Jerez and we bring it to the home of sherry. And there it ages for 1 year in XPX casks.
Okay.
So that super sweet sherry I was talking about earlier, where we basically sun-dry the grape and it's like a raisin. That's the casks that are used for this, and it ages for 12 months. But the difference, the climate and the humidity and the temperature in Scotland is so different from Jerez that the influence the cask and the sherry has on the whiskey is very different from what it would if you took it to Scotland.
Okay.
So it's basically created this whole new category. This was never done before. We were the first people to do it. So we say born in Scotland, raised in Jerez.
Okay.
Which is funny because when I still lived in Jerez, my colleague who was our spirits guy was like, it's you.
It's you. You are the nomad.
So it's nomad because it doesn't really have a home.
Okay.
I mean, it is a Scotch, but because it's finished in Jerez, you can't call it a Scotch. So it's just this really interesting change, if you like, in the production. So you have this lovely, like I said, it's mainly Speyside, so you have this lovely, elegant, more feminine, smooth whiskey. Like there's no peat to this, there's no smokiness. And then finished in the PX casks, like you were talking before about the brandy, it's super smooth. It's this lovely, smooth, round finish that you don't get when you use like the dry versions. The PX gives it a really, it's not sweet, but it's like a silky finish to it.
Awesome.
So, cheers. So I'm not a whiskey drinker, which people think is hilarious because I'm Scottish. But when
I mean, doesn't that run through your blood? Like, isn't that like, you talked about the family member that was born.
But the thing is, when I was growing up in Scotland, whiskey wasn't cool. Like, whiskey was what, not even my father, whiskey was what my grandfather drank. Like, when I was going out, when I was young and going out, it was like vodka or gin. Not even like rum. There was, in the UK, I don't know what it's like now, but there was not really any dark spirits. It was very much like vodka or gin. So that's what I drank when I went out, and whiskey was very old. Now I do know that my nephew, for example, he's 25, 26. God, that makes me feel old. When he's getting into whiskey, and when you go, now like the whole scene's changed. There's like amazing bars in like Edinburgh and Glasgow now, and they really push whiskey, and they'll do like a tasting flight, or they'll have like whiskies on special. So young people are starting to get into like the whiskey side of things, which is interesting because it's our biggest export, and before people didn't care, whereas now people are starting to learn about the different regions and the different finishes and everything. So it's becoming, but I started learning about whiskey with the Dalmore. That's when I started learning about whiskey, working with them, and then we started making this product. And for me, who I'm not a whiskey drinker, I love this because it's super easy on the palate. But it's interesting when we taste this at whiskey events, like your normal Scotch malt whiskey drinker is not going to drink this. But they do really celebrate the quality. Like they'll come and they'll be like, I won't drink it, but it's amazing quality and like it's really well finished and they love it. But they wouldn't, they're not.
I would drink this. I mean, I think this is absolutely amazing. And again, we're just having it neat over a cube. And I'm getting the sherry and just, it's really nice. Like this is, it's almost very much, like immediately I went to, like my brain went to like a New York sour. Like I want to make this with a sour and then dribble a little sherry over the top of that.
Like I love it like this, but in cocktails as well. People have like, again, bartenders are amazing. They've just ran with it. And if you add a little bit of PX or the sweet cherry to that, it really brings out that flavour. So this is the normal Nomad. We now have a 10-year-old as well, which is aged for a little bit longer. So it spends time in the PX cask and it spends a little time in these Matusalem casks. And we're actually we're expanding our project and we're starting to source from different parts of the world. So our next project is sourcing from Ireland. So we're bringing in Irish whiskey, which I think you'll like about. And the same, we take it to Jerez, we finish it in Jerez, and then so it's exciting to see the different influences and how the time spent in Jerez really changes the liquid as opposed to being in Scotland or Ireland or Japan or whatever. So it's exciting.
That's awesome. Well, all right. So question 5.
I'm scared about this one.
No. It comes down to the Whiskey Wednesday coin. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want. The coin will give us the answer. You don't have to answer, but if you want to answer, please.
So you ask the question, and then I spin the coin.
And then the coin will give us the answer. It's just a silly way to end the night. But so one side says fuck yeah, one side says fuck no. So
why is it Whiskey Wednesday?
That's me.
But you can drink any day whiskey.
Well, Whiskey Wednesdays, I tell people Whiskey Wednesdays is not a day, it's that little special place in your heart. And so
because I was like, just a Wednesday?
And again, the other side says drinking with friends.
I know, I like that.
The idea is that whenever you're drinking with friends, it's Whiskey Wednesdays. So like the idea is that Whiskey Wednesdays is a family. It's all about just drinking with friends and having a good time. You don't even have to drink whiskey. It's just a thing that you just do, and you're out. And
I'm good at that.
Yeah,
Drinking with friends.
Yeah, and then again, one side says fuck yeah, one side says fuck no. So, all right. So question 5, we have a saying here in the States. I don't know if it's in Spain or in the UK or in Scotland, but do you agree with the statement, wine before liquor, never sicker?
Ah, okay. Yeah, we have a similar saying, slightly different.
Okay.
So I spin.
Please, yeah.
So I don't have to answer.
You don't have the answer. That looks like a fuck yeah to me. Yep, fuck yeah.
So is it wine before liquor, never sicker?
Yeah. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. Wine before liquor, never sicker.
Wine before liquor, never sicker means that if you drink wine before liquor, you get sick.
Yeah. So like if you're drinking wine before.
Because I would always go beer, wine, liquor.
There you go.
That's my order.
Okay.
And I would do them all.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know if it's my Scottish roots, but I like them all.
Okay.
So like when I go out with friends, like I'll have an aperitif, then I'll have a beer, then I'll have some wine, then I'll have a cocktail, and they're like, we say, the only thing we say is grain before grape. So beer before wine. Okay. Which I stick by.
Okay.
And the liquor is whenever.
Yeah, that's just afterwards, whatever.
Or before.
Yeah.
Because here it's interesting because you start with a cocktail in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Which for me, cocktails were always like after when you're like going out.
Going out, yeah.
Whereas now I will like go to a restaurant and start with a cocktail.
Yeah.
While I'm deciding.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, well, Claire, there we go. That's 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered.
I survived.
You did. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Spaniard. I really appreciate it. And again, I hope we get to drink together very, very soon.
I'm sure we will.
This was a true fucking pleasure. I love, thank you for being my first wine person. And
first of many.
Yes, I hope so too. I want to expand into this. I just think this is so much. And again, Daniel was very jealous. So again, cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Slange, as they always say, the damn what it is.